Hello, it's Martha Sechler from the Brown County Public Library again, and I'm here to share a story with you. It occurred to me that with all of our staying at home together as families, sometimes it gets a little crowded. And I have a story that's all about a house that's way too crowded. It's called It Could Always Be Worse. And it comes from Russia, written down by Margo Zemach. It could always be worse. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, there lived a poor farmer with his wife, his mother, and his 6 children, the youngest of whom was still a baby, in one small house that had just one room. It was very crowded. And some days, when the baby was crying and the children were arguing and his wife and his mother were quarreling, and it just felt so confined that he didn't think he could stand it anymore. One day, he just walked out of the house and walked right into the village and went to the house of the village rabbi. Now, the rabbi was considered the wisest person in the village. He'd been around for a long, long time. And so people often went to the rabbi for advice. The poor old farmer said, "Rabbi, I don't think I can stand it anymore. I live with my wife, my mother, my 6 children, the youngest of whom is a baby, all in one-room house. And it's just too much. Can you help me? Can you tell me what to do?" Well, the rabbi closed his eyes and stroked his long gray beard. He sat there for a long time, or so it seemed to the poor farmer. And then finally he slowly opened his eyes and he said, "Will you do whatever I tell you?" And the poor farmer said, "Of course I will, Rabbi. You are the wisest man in the village." "Good," said the rabbi. "Then tell me, do you have any chickens?" "Yes, I have chickens," said the poor farmer. "I have a whole flock of chickens, and I have a rooster and a goose too." "Good," said the rabbi. "I want you to go home, and I want you to take those chickens and the rooster and the goose into your house to live with you." "Really?" said the poor farmer. "You heard what I said," said the rabbi. "Now go and do what I ask." So the poor farmer went back to his home, and he gathered up his chickens and his rooster and his goose, and he took them into the house. Well, now on top of the crying and the quarreling and the screaming, now there was also squawking and honking, and there was just so much noise, and besides all that, there were feathers in the soup. Well, this went on for a few days or a week, and then finally the poor farmer could stand it no longer. And he ran out of his house and back to the house of the rabbi, and he said, Rabbi, it's worse than before. Now there's honking and squawking, and there's crowing and yelling, and there's feathers in the soup." "Well," said the rabbi, "let me think. Let me ask you this. Do you have a goat?" "Yes, I have a goat." "Why?" "I want you to go home. I want you to take the goat into the house to live with you." "Don't question me," said the rabbi. "You said you'd do whatever I ask." So the poor man went home, and he got the goat, and he took the goat into the house to live with him. Well, now on top of the crying and the squalling and the screeching and the honking and the clacking and the quacking and, just every other sound, there was baa, baa, and that goat just liked to butt everything in sight. It was terrible. And besides all that, there were feathers in the soup. This went on for some days or a week, and then finally the poor old farmer could stand it no longer. He ran out of his house and he ran to the house of the rabbi, and he said, Rabbi, it's even worse now. I mean, there's all this clucking and screeching and butting and buying, and you know what? There's still feathers in the soup. Please help me. All right, said the rabbi. Let me think a little bit more. Just a little bit. Tell me, do you have a cow? Yes, said the farmer. Tell me why. I want you to go home, said the rabbi, and I want you to take that cow, and I want you to bring her into the house to live with you. Now go and do what I say. So the poor farmer turned around and trudged home thinking, oh, the rabbi has gone mad. He was supposed to be so wise, and this is just making everything worse. And then he went to the barn, and he got the cow, and he took the cow into the house. Well, now cows are really large animals, and it took up almost half the space. And it had a very, very loud moo, especially when she was distressed. And so, on top of the crowing and the squawking and the crying and the wailing and all the other sounds, there were still feathers in the soup. And this went on for some days or a week, until finally the poor farmer thought he just couldn't stand it. He was going to have to leave home. But first he went back to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi, it's the worst it could possibly be. It's just awful. There's all this mooing and there's no room for anybody to move, and then the goat butts everybody, and there's crying and squawking and hollering, and oh my, there's still feathers in the soup. I'm just gonna run away from home. No, said the rabbi. Patience, my man. I want you to go home now, and I want you to take the cow and the goat and the chickens and the goose and the rooster, and I want you to take them out of the house and put them back where they belong. Really? Really? Yes, said the rabbi. Now be gone. And so the poor farmer went home, smiling all the way. He went and he took all those animals out of his house, took them back to the barn and the barnyard where they belonged. And when he returned to his home, it was so quiet and so peaceful, he could hardly believe it. And he thought to himself, that rabbi is the smartest, the wisest man in all the world. For he has taught me that no matter how bad it gets, it could always be worse. The